So let's get reaction now from Matthew Sinclair, who's Chief Executive of the Taxpayers Alliance, which campaigns for lower taxes and also says that it highlights what it regards as wasteful government spending. And he's joining us now. Do you think this is wasteful government spending, or as the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have been saying, it's an engine for growth, it could create 100,000 jobs?
I do think it's wasteful spending. I think that there are much better ways of spending what is well over £1,000 for every family in Britain. It's an enormous amount which is going to have to be paid by ordinary taxpayers to support this scheme to benefit a relatively small number of fortunate passengers. The benefits just don't justify the enormous costs.
But, you know, one of the things the Chancellor's been saying today is actually if you don't make these big decisions to spend quite a lot of money, even if it's a project that takes a lot of time, well, actually, the Victorians would never have built the railways in the first place.
Well, the Victorians built the railways incredibly quickly, so it's an extremely poor comparison. And the reality is that, yes, you do need to make big decisions at times, but those big decisions are when you need to be particularly careful that those investments are justified. Otherwise, you wind up with just much bigger white elephants. And it's too easy for politicians to get attached to these kinds of vanity projects and forget about the smaller schemes, whether it's railways taking people into cities in the Midlands and the North, which really need upgrading, whether it's road projects. There are a whole range of other capital expenditure projects which aren't as big, don't sit as well in a
Okay, so what would you prefer? What would you spend the money on then? What would you prefer?
I don't think there's. I think that we need a lot of incremental improvements to improve capacity on the particular line that's being upgraded, the West Coast Main Line. Incremental improvements, and then we need lots to focus on lots of smaller investments, because in the end we will find lots of things to do with so much pressure on the finances of ordinary taxpayers on their own budgets and on the government finances. We'll find lots of things to do with 30 billion. We're not short of things we can do with 30 billion.
But you call it a vanity project, but actually if you look at our competitors, you know, they've got high-speed rail links. Look at France, they've got high-speed rail links. It's an economic necessity if you want to be a forward-looking, thrusting modern economy.
We've got high-speed rail links. The West Coast Main Line isn't slow. I've taken that train plenty of times, and that is a fast train. And we've got to ask, is the improvement we're going to get, when we aren't going from having, you know, something trotting along at a few miles an hour to a high-speed line, we're talking about going from an already fast line, building an even faster one. Will the improvements be enough to justify the fantastic cost? And that's where it all falls apart. That's where the government's business case has steadily unravelled to the point where the first leg, the one we're actually going to be sort of starting to build in the immediate future, it's very clear once you adjust for some of the mistakes still remaining in there, you don't get back enough benefits to justify the cost. When you've got so many good projects.
You could have said that about the Channel Tunnel. I mean, a huge initial outlay, yes, but long term, the economic benefits are really far-reaching.
Well, the economic benefits are large and the costs are large. The question is, which is larger? And the government the only way they've been able to even remotely make the sums add up is to throw in lots of dodgy assumptions around how they're forecasting the amount of demand for this service, around the value of people's time, when increasingly they can get a lot of work done on the train. And that's the only way they've been able to make this stack up. And it's still, even if you accepted their business case at face value, it still doesn't look good compared to many projects, whether we're talking about the roads, whether we're talking about rail projects people would still like to go ahead with, which offer much better value for money. And that's what this all comes down to in the end. Scarce resources, which we need to allocate effectively, with so much pressure, particularly on vital capital spending. We need to make sure our money is spent in the right place. This is not the right project. There are much better, quicker ways of delivering greater capacity for more people, which don't leave plenty of towns from Coventry, Stoke, towns like that getting a worse service and come at such a huge price tag for taxpayers.